The first notes of "Still Here at Dawn" rolled through the packed Civic Theater and my hands went cold. On the giant screen above the stage, beneath the title of the song I had written beside my mother and never released, were the words, "Written by Vivian Ellis." Vivian was my older sister and the executive director of the Ellis Arts Foundation, the woman this finale was about to honor for protecting artists. I was Nora Ellis, 42, a public school choir director and the house accompanist. I had spent weeks arranging our mother's tribute because I believed Vivian had protected our family archive after her death. Now I was expected to play my own stolen music, smile for the cameras, and help celebrate her. I wanted to stop everything. Instead, I finished the cue, memorized the false credit, and kept my face still. I needed proof before I accused my sister. Then Vivian appeared backstage holding my credential. "Why does the production system say you opened the song's stem folder? Why does the production system say you opened the song's stem folder?" Vivian held my credential between two fingers as if it belonged to her. Behind her, stagehands moved beneath white spotlights, and the giant screen still carried my song under her name. "Because I am the accompanist," I said. "The stem folder is part of the material assigned to tonight's performance." My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Vivian, my older sister, and the executive director of the Ellis Arts Foundation watched me, then gave me the polished smile she used with donors. She said the production team had finalized the music and suggested I stop chasing technical details before the broadcast. I wanted to point at the screen and ask why my music was wearing her name. Instead, I told her I had noticed a credit that might be wrong. Vivian did not even look at the screen. "It is not wrong." She reminded me that after our mother died, she had taken responsibility for the family archive. According to her, I had transferred the family compositions years ago, and the paperwork was settled. I remembered signing stacks of estate documents during those months while grief made every page look the same. I did not remember giving Vivian my songs. "Show me the transfer," I said. Her smile tightened. She told me this was not the time to reopen old paperwork, especially when her foundation was still supporting the music program at my school. I heard the threat beneath the reminder. If I embarrassed her, my students could pay for it. For years, that would have stopped me. This time I only said, "Then I will wait to see the document." Vivian handed back my credential and told me not to make a scene. A production assistant called us toward the stage for the finalists' rehearsal. I returned to the piano because walking away would tell Vivian too much. Zoe Ramirez, the 27-year-old finalist scheduled to sing "Still Here at Dawn," stood beside the microphone with a black music folder against her chest. I had met her that afternoon when she introduced herself as a community college vocal instructor, hoping for her first professional recording. We started from the second verse. Then Zoe hesitated before the bridge. Without thinking, I said, "The left hand comes in late there, one beat after the vocal." She stared at me. "That is exactly what my score says." That delayed entrance was an error in my first handwritten arrangement that I had kept because my mother liked the tension. Zoe turned the page and I saw a diagonal pencil mark near the lower staff. I knew it. My pencil had torn the paper there years ago. I asked where the arrangement came from. Zoe glanced toward the wings, where Vivian was speaking with a sponsor representative, and said the foundation had supplied it as an unreleased Vivian Ellis composition. I told her I was not accusing her, but I needed to see the score after rehearsal. She stiffened. Contestants had been warned not to share production materials, so I gave her the one fact I could safely say. "I know that bridge because I wrote it." My hands began to shake, and I missed the next cue. Vivian crossed the stage and laughed softly. Loud enough for Zoe and the crew to hear, she said, "Mom always knew which daughter belonged on stage and which one belonged behind the piano." I had heard versions of that joke most of my life. That night, with my song on the stand and her name glowing above me, it cut differently. My palm came down toward the piano lid. I stopped an inch before slamming it. The wood trembled beneath my hand. For one terrible second, I wanted the crack to silence the theater. Zoe saw me. "Nora," she said quietly, "why does hearing this song hurt you?" I looked at Vivian, then back at Zoe, because I need to know where that copy came from. Vivian told the stage manager we were losing time and pushed the rehearsal forward. I forced myself to play. Losing control would give Vivian exactly what she needed: an emotional sister, a public outburst, and no proof anyone else could verify. I counted measures until a local television crew pulled her away. Zoe found me beside the costume rack soon afterward. She kept the folder in her own hands. "I cannot give this to you," she said, "but you can look." I waited until she opened the first page. The scan showed Vivian's typed credit, but beneath the clean printing were my old pencil fingering marks. The upper corner was torn in the same crescent shape as a page from my faded green composition notebook. Near the bottom sat the pale edge of a coffee ring. I remembered the morning it happened because my mother had scolded me for setting a mug on the piano bench. This was not a song reconstructed from memory. It was a reproduction of my private manuscript. I asked whether the packet identified its source. Zoe turned to the production information page. At the bottom were the words Ellis Family Archive. My stomach tightened. Vivian had controlled that archive since our mother died. I asked Zoe if I could photograph only the score and source label. She hesitated, then nodded. I took the pictures while she watched and copied nothing else. Please do not confront Vivian, I said. Not yet. Zoe asked whether she was in trouble. I told her truthfully that I did not know the full problem yet, only that I believed there was a rights issue and she had not caused it. Before she could ask more, a foundation co-coordinator called her to wardrobe. Now I had something Vivian could not erase by calling me jealous. A finalist score carrying the scars of my original page, but the source label also gave her a defense. She could still claim the archive belonged to her because I had signed it away. I needed to know whether the production audio carried the same trail. I went to the technical booth and found Owen Mercer checking cue sheets beside the mixing console. Owen was the Civic Theater's technical director, and I had worked with him on school concerts for several years. I asked whether I still had access to the audio assigned to the number I was accompanying. He said the foundation had just requested that my general archive permissions be removed. Vivian was closing doors. Owen could not override that restriction, but my performer contract still gave me access to accompaniment files assigned to me for sound balance and rehearsal. He pointed to the final sound check on the cue sheet. That access remained valid. I only need what I am already authorized to use, I told him. Owen nodded. The final check would be my last clean chance before the live sequence. When I stepped back into the corridor, Vivian was waiting beside a photographer. She slipped an arm around my shoulders before I could move away. The photographer asked us to face the foundation backdrop, where our mother's portrait hung above the words, "Legacy through integrity." Vivian leaned close and murmured that I should remember what was at stake before turning a misunderstanding into something ugly. Then she smiled. I smiled too. The flash went off. A production assistant hurried past, stopped, and lowered her voice. Nora, just so you know, security was asked to report if you take any more backstage photos. Vivian's hand was still on my shoulder. Something inside me went quiet. I had spent years believing that staying calm meant letting Vivian win. Standing beneath that word integrity, I finally understood the difference. I did not need to shout. I needed to know more than she thought I knew. I slipped my phone into my bag and looked toward the technical booth. The final sound check was now my only clean path forward, and Vivian had already started watching every move I made. The final sound check was called before I could decide whether Vivian's warning was meant to frighten me or trap me. I walked back toward the stage with my phone buried in my bag. A foundation coordinator stood beside the mixing console, reminding everyone that we were behind schedule. Owen Mercer, the Civic Theater's technical director, gave me a brief look. My archive access was gone, but the accompaniment assigned to me was still mine to rehearse. I sat at the piano and asked for the backing track so I could balance my entrance. The coordinator objected that we had already checked it. I said I could not accompany a live finalist if I could not hear the piano stem clearly. Owen backed me on technical grounds, and the track began again. On the second pass, I heard a faint breath beneath the polished strings, then a younger version of my own voice singing two unfinished words. My fingers froze. Can you isolate the piano side for one measure? Owen adjusted the console. The buried layer came through more clearly, my scratch vocal, then a woman saying, "Evelyn Grant, session 3, followed by my mother counting me in. I knew that count from the old studio when my mother tapped one finger against a coffee cup. I forced myself to look at the console instead of the wings. I wrote down the visible file name and stem label because they were part of the material assigned to me as accompanist. I copied nothing. I touched no restricted folder. But the audio being used that night contained a recording of me and my mother from years before Vivian's public claim. The coordinator ended the check. I found Zoe Ramirez near the dressing rooms, already wearing the dark blue dress she would perform in. I told the 27-year-old finalist only what I could prove. Her score matched a manuscript I had written, and the production track contained an old recording of my voice. Zoe lowered her eyes. Vivian had personally selected the song for her, she said, calling it a rare unreleased piece from the Ellis archive. Then Zoe admitted there was a contract after the show. If she placed well, the foundation's licensing partner wanted her to sign a management and recording option immediately. For 1 second, every careful thought left me. Until then, I had still been treating this as a family theft I could fight over privately. Zoe was standing in front of me believing my sister had the right to build her career around the same song. I asked who arranged the agreement. Zoe said Vivian had handled it and wanted everything signed while attention from the finale was still fresh. Anger hit so hard that I turned toward the corridor, ready to find my sister. My hand closed around a costume rack. I could already see the result. I would accuse Vivian. She would wave some document I had never seen, and the cameras would catch an angry younger sister losing control. Nora, what am I supposed to do? Zoe asked. Her voice stopped me. I looked at her instead of the hallway. Do not sign anything until after my tribute. There may be a rights problem, and you deserve to know what you are signing. She asked if she should confront Vivian. I told her no. I would not make her carry an accusation I had not finished proving. Then Zoe told me the signing packet had been moved backstage so it could be completed immediately after the winner was announced. The distance between Vivian's lie and somebody else's signature had shrunk to minutes. Staying calm could no longer mean waiting until everyone went home. The name from the track gave me my next move. Evelyn Grant had been the recording engineer who worked with my mother and me during those old sessions. I had not spoken to her in years, but I still had an email address from a holiday message she sent after closing her studio. I stepped into an empty rehearsal room and called. I identified myself and told her exactly what I had heard. Her verbal slate, my younger scratch vocal, my mother's count-in, and the song now credited to Vivian. Evelyn hesitated. She did not want to be dragged into an old family disagreement. She had believed Vivian handled the archive with everyone's consent after my sister paid storage costs when Evelyn closed the studio. I did not ask her to choose a side. I described the session instead. The missed piano entrance and the way my mother laughed when I restarted. Evelyn remembered. Then she said the file Vivian supplied could not be the original master, because Evelyn still possessed the master in her own preserved archive. I asked whether she could verify that the voice was mine and that the session existed before Vivian's claimed authorship. Evelyn said yes, but warned that sending records could pull her into legal testimony later. I told her I understood. I hated asking, but silence carried a price too. An email arrived minutes later. Evelyn had sent a photograph of her original session ledger and a protected copy of the preserved master. I read the ledger first. My name appeared as writer and performer. My mother was listed as present. Vivian's name was nowhere on that session line. Through my headphones, my younger voice entered exactly where I remembered, followed by my mother's count and the opening of Still Here at Dawn. The recording existed years before the story Vivian was presenting to sponsors that night. Evelyn had given me an independent source that did not depend on my memory. I nearly stopped listening when the song ended, but my mother's voice continued. She said something about the archive. I caught only enough to realize there was more on this master than the memorial clip our family had used in later years. My chest tightened. Evelyn's note said the master was unedited. I saved the file without drawing a conclusion from a fragment. Whatever those later words meant, I would not turn them into an accusation until I understood the full context. For now, the ledger and master proved what I needed them to prove. My song and my recording existed independently of Vivian's version. When I returned to the main corridor, 2 staff members were carrying a sponsor folder toward the stage entrance. I heard the stage manager confirm that the licensing announcement would follow the finalist results and come before Vivian's Legacy Stewardship Award. On a monitor, the countdown to the live sequence had dropped again. My original plan had been simple. Survive the show, confront Vivian afterward, demand the paperwork, and keep the damage inside the family if I could. That plan was dead. If I waited, Zoe might sign before I finished my first sentence. I checked what I had. Photographs of a score carrying the scars of my private manuscript, the archive source label, production information from a track containing my younger voice, and Evelyn's independent ledger and master. None of it required me to guess what Vivian wanted or why she had done it. Vivian controlled the event, but she no longer controlled all the facts. Across the lobby, a technician tested the screen reserved for my scheduled tribute to my mother. My segment was still on the running order shortly before Vivian's award. Looking at that screen, I understood that I had been imagining the wrong confrontation. I did not need to corner my sister and hope she confessed. If her version was about to become official in front of an audience, then the correction had to reach that same audience first. I put my phone away and headed toward the production desk. The private confrontation was over. I now held the ignition point of the truth, and before Zoe signed anything, I intended to use my own tribute to stop the lie in public. But one piece still stood between suspicion and a complete case. The document Vivian claimed carried my signature. became the only thing I could think about as I crossed toward the production desk. If it was real, every discovery could still be twisted into a family argument over something I had legally surrendered. If it was false, the entire evening rested on more than stolen credit. I needed to see it before my tribute began. The sponsor, clearance binder, sat beside Melissa Hart, the stage coordinator responsible for performer releases and music clearances. I did not ask for the whole binder. I told Melissa my tribute used family archive material and that Vivian had referred to a transfer bearing my signature. If any page claimed rights over my compositions, I needed to see the part naming me. Melissa checked the tabs and pulled out only those pages. The document looked official enough to make my stomach drop. It described an assignment of unpublished compositions from me to Vivian. At the bottom sat a signature that resembled mine, including the slanted N I had used for years. The date fell during the months after our mother died, when grief had blurred weeks together, and I had signed stacks of estate papers. But one sentence claimed I had transferred all unpublished musical compositions, present and future, connected to the Ellis family archive. I did not remember agreeing to anything like that. "Can I have a copy of the pages that identify me?" I asked. Melissa said she could send a scan because my name and signature were part of the clearance packet I was being asked to rely on. I watched her scan only those pages. When the file reached my phone, she was called away for another transition check. I stepped into the narrow hall behind the rehearsal rooms and called Rachel Monroe, the 63-year-old attorney who had handled my mother's estate. I told her where I was and sent the scan. Rachel did not give me the answer I wanted immediately. She reminded me that not remembering a document did not prove it was false. She would compare it with the closed estate file and the correspondence from that period. Her caution frustrated me because the production clock on the backstage monitor kept shrinking. But it also held me to the rule I had made for myself. I would expose only what I could prove. Rachel called back while a finalist interview played on the monitor. She had found the estate inventory and the correspondence from the month printed on Vivian's document. No assignment of my compositions appeared in the estate file. More important, one letter Rachel sent to both of us had specifically separated the physical family archive from intellectual property belonging individually to each sister. My handwritten songs were listed among the items I retained. She sent me the letter and inventory page. "Does that prove the transfer is forged?" I asked. "No. It proves it is not part of the estate record I handled, and it conflicts with the records I have. Do not claim more than that until the document is properly examined." That distinction mattered. Rachel was giving me a boundary, not a weapon. I could show the document Vivian relied on, show the records that contradicted it, and let the contradiction stand. Then Rachel reminded me what public exposure might cost. Vivian's foundation funded part of my school's arts program. The foundation could freeze grants. Vivian could threaten legal action. My students could lose resources because I chose to challenge my sister in front of sponsors and cameras. Through the hallway window, I could see a youth chorus waiting near the wings, holding the same kind of sheet music my own students used. "I understand," I said, though I could not know every consequence yet. Before ending the call, Rachel repeated that her records independently showed no transfer of my compositions through the estate. That was the confirmation I needed. The finalist score tied the current arrangement to my private manuscript. The production track tied the show to my old recording. Evelyn's master and ledger placed that recording years before Vivian's claim. Now the alleged assignment collided with Rachel's separate records. I still could not say what Vivian thought or intended. I could say what she was presenting as fact. I had barely reached my dressing area when Vivian came in without knocking. She wore the cream-colored jacket she planned to wear for the award, with our mother's small silver treble-clef brooch pinned near the collar. Seeing it on her almost broke my concentration. Vivian stepped close and adjusted my black performance jacket as if we were still sisters preparing for a family recital. "The award segment moved up," she said. "I want you beside me when they show Mom's photograph." Inside my bag were the scan carrying a version of my signature and Rachel's contradictory records. Evelyn's master was on my laptop 2 feet away. Vivian's fingers smoothed my collar. "You should smile," she added. "Mom would hate seeing us look divided tonight." For one sharp second, I wanted to pull out the assignment and demand an explanation before she could prepare one. The words were already at the back of my throat. Instead, I looked at the brooch and then at her. I will be ready for my tribute. Vivian watched me for a moment. Good. People deserve to see us together. I smiled back. That smile hurt more than shouting would have. It meant letting her believe, for a few more minutes, that she still knew which version of me would walk onto the stage. I had played the quiet younger sister for years, the one who absorbed the insult and protected the family name. That night, I used the role as cover. After Vivian left, I locked the door. My tribute was still mine under the performer agreement. I had originally planned to play a short arrangement while photographs of my mother appeared behind me. Now I opened the harmless memorial montage on my laptop and began replacing it. I did not need to seize the entire show. I needed to change only the media assigned to my own presentation and accept responsibility for it. I built the sequence around sources, not accusations. First came the current score credit naming Vivian, followed by the image Zoe had allowed me to photograph, with my pencil marks, torn corner, and coffee ring. Then I photographed the matching page in the faded green composition notebook I had brought for the original tribute. The damaged edge lined up with the scan. Next came the audio. I placed a short excerpt from the current production stem before the matching portion of Evelyn's authenticated master. Evelyn's session ledger followed, showing my name as writer and performer. Dates, names, source. Nothing theatrical was necessary. Then I placed Vivian's alleged assignment beside Rachel's contemporaneous estate inventory and letter. I did not label the assignment a forgery. I could say I did not remember signing it. Rachel could say it did not appear in the estate file she handled and conflicted with the written allocation from that time. Anything more would have to be examined later. The hardest part was my mother's voice. I put on headphones and listened past the point where the familiar memorial clip had always ended. I knew the opening words almost by heart, my mother talking about Vivian's talent for organizing the archive, then saying she trusted her to take care of everything. For years, I had carried that sentence like an instruction whenever I questioned Vivian's control. But Evelyn's preserved master did not stop there. I listened to the continuation once, then again. By the end, my hands were flat on the desk. The shortened memorial version had removed words that changed how I understood what came before them. I would not turn that discovery into a claim about every intention my mother had ever carried. I could only use the source itself, exactly as Evelyn had preserved it. I added the unedited excerpt to the end of the sequence without writing a caption that told the audience what to think. If I reached the stage, they would hear the difference for themselves. A knock came at the door. Owen Mercer called my name. I showed the Civic Theater's technical director the revised media package. Owen did not ask whether my accusations were true. He cared about file format, duration, cue points, and whether I had authority to replace the media in my own scheduled segment. I showed him the performer agreement. The tribute was assigned to me, including control of my musical arrangement and presentation cues. Once I load it, "This runs if your cue is called," he said. "That is what I want." We went to the technical booth. Owen loaded the revision onto the theater's independent playback rack and tested the opening frame. The current credit appeared, then my manuscript page, then black at the end, exactly where I had designed it. For the first time that night, I held a kind of power Vivian could not remove by changing an archive password. The evidence was inside a venue system she did not own, attached to a segment I was contractually scheduled to present. If I reached the stage, the screen and microphone would be mine for those few minutes. That final condition became the danger almost immediately. As Owen finished the test, Tyler Brooks entered the booth. I knew Tyler only as Vivian's event operations manager, the man coordinating sponsor arrivals and backstage credentials. He looked at the preview monitor. "That is not the memorial reel." I revised my presentation. Tyler asked whether Vivian had approved it. I told him the performer paperwork gave me responsibility for my own tribute, and Owen had verified the technical authorization. Tyler did not argue. He stepped into the hallway and made a call. Less than 2 minutes later, my foundation credentials stopped working. The reader flashed red, when I tried to enter the corridor leading toward the performer waiting area. Tyler returned with Vivian and 2 venue security officers. Vivian did not raise her voice. She said proprietary foundation material had been copied into an unauthorized presentation and asked security to remove me from foundation-controlled backstage areas. Heat rose into my face, but I forced myself to ask one question. Has my theater performer agreement been canceled? One security officer checked his tablet. I only have noticed that your foundation access was revoked. Vivian said the distinction did not matter because the event belonged to her foundation. Owen came out of the booth. He did not defend me or my evidence. He simply stated that the theater still had a signed performer agreement listing me for the tribute, and that no venue cancellation had reached him. The officer said they needed the stage manager to determine which access route remained valid. Nora, do not do this here, Vivian said. The old command was hidden inside a reasonable sentence. Not here, not tonight, not while people were watching. There would always be a better place for the truth as long as Vivian controlled the place where we stood. I am not forcing my way anywhere, I said. Check the contract. Vivian accused me of downloading foundation property and trying to sabotage a live event. I told the officer I had used only materials I was authorized to view, files shown to me voluntarily, and records sent directly by Evelyn and Rachel. I said nothing about what Rachel had confirmed. I did not show Vivian the finished sequence. Every extra word would tell her which evidence to attack first. Applause burst through the wall. The officer touched his earpiece while someone called the stage manager. Then I heard the host through the backstage speakers, thanking the sponsors and saying Vivian's name. My stomach dropped. Vivian had warned me that the award segment was moving earlier, but not by this much. The host began introducing the Ellis Arts Foundation and its work preserving artistic legacies. My tribute was supposed to come immediately before Vivian's award. If he was already starting her introduction, my window was collapsing. Owen looked at me. Your file is loaded. Your cue is still in the system. Loaded did not mean played. Between me and the stage entrance stood 2 security officers waiting for a ruling, a dead foundation credential, and my sister, who now knew I had changed the tribute. The host's voice rose over another wave of applause. And tonight, we honor a woman whose commitment to artists has shaped this community. Vivian turned toward the stage. I stayed beside the theater wall while my performer contract remained open on the officer's tablet, and everything I had gathered waited on the independent playback rack. For the first time, I controlled the truth and the means to show it. I just might not reach the microphone before Vivian was crowned with the lie. The host was still praising Vivian through the backstage speakers when the stage manager arrived beside security. She checked the performer agreement on the officer's tablet. My foundation credential had been revoked, but my theater contract had not. My tribute remained on the running order. She pointed toward a side corridor. She can enter through performer access. Vivian's face tightened. This is my foundation's event. It is the theater stage, the manager said. Her performance agreement is active. I followed the marked corridor before Vivian could argue again. Applause leaked through the walls, and the host was already describing her work preserving artistic legacies. At the stage entrance, the manager lifted one hand. Your cue is next. Stay inside your contracted time. Then I stepped into the light. The host glanced toward the wings when my name appeared on his monitor, and for half a second I thought someone had removed the cue. Then the piano light came on. That tiny circle of light mattered more than the applause. It meant the theater system still recognized me as the scheduled performer, even if the foundation no longer did. Before I showed Zoe's page, I made one thing clear. The finalist who received this score did not create this problem. She showed me the material after I recognized details that should not have been there. I did not want Vivian to escape by letting suspicion fall on someone with less power. Zoe had walked into the evening believing the foundation had cleared the song. I had been the one who recognized the theft, and I would be the one to carry the accusation. The Civic Theater was full of finalists, families, sponsors, donors, and local reporters. Vivian stood in the wing beneath a blue work light, smiling as if she still believed the tribute would be harmless. I sat at the piano. My name is Nora Ellis, I said. I was scheduled to play a tribute to my mother before tonight's Legacy Stewardship Award. I am still going to honor her, but first I need to correct something that happened on this stage. I played the opening measures of Still Here at Dawn, then stopped. The first image appeared behind me, the finalist score, with written by Vivian Ellis across the top. This is the version supplied for tonight's performance. I saw it because I am the house accompanist. The next image showed the page Zoe Ramirez had voluntarily allowed me to photograph. I pointed to the diagonal pencil mark, the torn upper corner, and the pale coffee ring. Then I opened my faded green composition notebook on the piano. This is my original handwritten manuscript. The close image showed the same damage and markings. The room went quiet. I am not asking you to believe me because I am Vivian's sister. I am asking you to look at the sources. I gave Owen Mercer, the theater's technical director, the cue. The production stem played through the speakers. Beneath the polished arrangement came my younger scratch vocal, Evelyn Grant's old studio slate, and my mother counting me into the measure. Then Owen played the matching passage from the master Evelyn had sent me from her own archive. Evelyn's session ledger appeared on the screen. My name was listed as writer and performer. My mother was listed as present. The date was years earlier than the authorships are being used that night. Evelyn recorded that session, I said. She independently preserved this master and ledger. She sent them after I described the slate I heard in tonight's production file. Movement broke at stage left. Vivian reached the stage manager. Stop the feed. She said loudly enough for the front rows to hear. This is not the approved program. The screen stayed on. My contracted segment was still running. Vivian stepped nearer. Nora, this is a family misunderstanding. Those materials were shared. Then the record should make that clear. They do. You signed the rights over years ago. I pressed the next cue. The alleged assignment appeared behind me, including my name and a signature that resembled mine. This is the document I was shown tonight after Vivian told me I transferred my unpublished compositions to her. I do not remember signing it. Vivian turned toward the audience. She signed dozens of documents after our mother died. Not remembering does not make this invalid. That is true, I said, which is why I called Rachel Monroe, the attorney who handled our mother's estate. Rachel's contemporaneous letter and estate inventory replaced the assignment. I explained only what Rachel had confirmed. No transfer of my compositions appeared in the estate file she handled, and her written records from that period specifically separated the physical family archive from intellectual property belonging to each sister. My handwritten songs were listed among the property I retained. I am not claiming this audience can determine whether that assignment is forged, I said. I am saying it conflicts with independent records preserved by the attorney who handled the estate. The atmosphere shifted. Vivian could no longer reduce everything to two sisters remembering grief differently. A reporter raised her phone. Several finalists turned toward Vivian. She stepped onto the stage and addressed the room without taking my microphone. Her voice was controlled. Our family shared music informally for years. Nora is upset, and I understand that, but she is pulling private material out of context. Our mother trusted me to manage the archive. Nora knew that. There are recordings where Mom says exactly that. The words landed harder than her denial of the paperwork. I had heard that recording for years. My mother praised Vivian for organizing the archive and said she trusted her to take care of everything. Whenever I questioned my sister's control, that sentence had made me feel as if I were arguing with our mother. My fingers curled against the piano. Vivian looked toward the audience. I protected what Mom asked me to protect. For 1 second, I almost answered from memory. Then I looked at Owen. I heard that recording too, I said. But the version our family used stopped early. Evelyn's preserved master does not. I gave the cue. My mother's familiar voice filled the theater. She spoke warmly about Vivian's ability to organize the boxes, recordings, programs, and photographs. She said Vivian was good at taking care of everything. Then the audio continued beyond the point where the memorial version had always ended. My mother clarified that managing the archive did not mean owning work that belonged to someone else. She named my compositions as mine. She said that if Vivian helped organize the materials, my songs still remained under my name and my decisions, and she did not want one daughter's public voice replacing the others. I could not move. The sentence I had obeyed for years had been part of a longer statement. I did not know who shortened the memorial version, when it was shortened, or why. The master did not answer that. I would not turn an unanswered question into another accusation. When the recording ended, I said, "That is the unedited continuation Evelyn preserved. I cannot tell you tonight who shortened the version our family later heard. I can tell you I had never heard the rest until tonight." This time the audience reacted. Voices rose across the theater. A finalist covered her mouth. A sponsor turned fully toward Vivian. The Legacy Stewardship Award remained on its pedestal at the edge of the stage, glittering under the lights. Vivian's composure finally broke. "Turn it off." Nothing changed on the screen. She faced me. "You have no idea what you are doing. I know which records I am showing. This proves nothing about legal ownership. You chose a different life, Nora. You have resented what I built for years." The old wound opened exactly where she aimed it, me behind the piano, her in front of donors. My quieter career treated as evidence that I had surrendered the right to be heard. I wanted to defend my whole life. Instead, I pointed back to the evidence. This is not about who had the more public career. A finalist was given my song under Vivian's name. Tonight's production file contains my old recording. Evelyn's independent master and ledger predate the current credit. Rachel's estate records contradict the transfer Vivian relies on, and the unedited recording does not say what the shortened version taught me to believe. I let the silence hold. That is what I can prove. Near the finalist seating area, Zoe Ramirez stood and looked toward the woman holding the black signing folder I had seen backstage. Before Zoe reached her, a sponsor representative rose. "Until the rights issue is reviewed, we are pausing tonight's licensing announcement." The room burst into conversation. Vivian turned on him. "You cannot make that decision based on a family dispute." "I can pause an announcement," he said, "and I am." The woman with the folder approached Zoe. Zoe shook her head. "I am not signing anything tonight." Relief nearly buckled my knees. That signature had been the deadline. Whatever happened next, Zoe would not sign while believing Vivian's ownership was settled. Vivian looked toward the foundation board table. "We can review documents privately after the program." A woman rose from the table. I recognized Denise Caldwell, the foundation board chair, because Vivian had introduced us at a donor reception the year before. Denise did not declare anyone guilty. Given the conflicting rights records presented tonight, the board is suspending licensing activity connected to the disputed catalog and suspending Vivian's executive authority pending an independent review. No one reached for the award. Denise added that relevant records would be preserved and counsel contacted before further use of the disputed material. I did not know what the review would eventually find. I knew only what had changed in front of me. Vivian no longer controlled whether the event continued as if nothing had happened. She stared at me. "Tell them this is a misunderstanding." "I will correct anything I got wrong," I said, "but I will not call documented conflicts a misunderstanding to make this room comfortable." Scattered applause rose, but I did not want applause. I wanted the use of my work stopped until ownership could be examined. I am asking the foundation, the production company, and the licensing partner not to use these compositions under disputed ownership until the records are independently reviewed. I am not asking anyone to punish Vivian because I am angry. I am asking that my name not be removed from my own work. The screen went black at the end of my assigned cue. The stage manager quietly told me my segment was complete. I closed the green notebook and walked into the wing. Behind me, the award remained untouched. Backstage, phones rang and staff moved in every direction. I did not know what decisions were being made beyond what had been announced. I knew the licensing presentation had stopped, Zoe had not signed, and Vivian's executive authority had been suspended pending review. I was halfway down the loading corridor when Vivian caught me. There were no cameras there, only concrete walls and stacked road cases. "You think you won?" she asked. "I think the song is not being licensed tonight. You destroyed the foundation in front of everyone. The board made its own decision." Vivian stepped closer. "Do you have any idea how many people depend on that foundation?" I thought of my students before she said it. "Your school grant comes through me." The corridor seemed to narrow. "You retract this," Vivian said. "Tell the board you panicked and misread old family records. Say the presentation went farther than you intended. I can keep the grant intact." Rachel's warning returned to me. The cost had arrived. "And if I do not?" Vivian held my gaze. "Then your school loses that money with me." There was no audience between us now, no stage and no applause. The public lie had collapsed. What remained was the private bargain that had kept me quiet for years. Except this time my students were standing on the other side of it. There was no audience between us now, no stage and no applause. The public lie had collapsed. What remained was the private bargain that had kept me quiet for years, except this time my students were standing on the other side of it. Vivian waited in the loading corridor, one hand gripping her evening bag. "You retract this, and I can keep the school grant intact. For 1 second, I saw my music room instead of the concrete wall behind her, dented choir risers, cracked instrument cases. Students who stayed after class because rehearsal was the one place nobody laughed when their voices shook. The foundation money paid for sheet music, transportation, accompanist hours, and repairs we could not easily replace. Vivian knew exactly where to press. If I say I misread the records, I asked, will you also say the licensing claim was wrong? Her expression hardened. I am offering you a way to stop hurting people. That sentence had worked on me before. Family peace, our mother's name, my students. Someone else was always placed in front of the truth, so I would feel selfish for touching it. I will not retract evidence I can verify, I said. If I made a factual mistake, I will correct it. Otherwise, any discussion about the songs, the assignment, or the foundation goes through counsel. You chose strangers over your own family. No. I stopped making other people pay for our family's silence. I walked away before she could offer another bargain. The consequences started before I reached home. My phone filled with messages from people who had watched the stream or heard from someone inside the theater. I ignored relatives calling me cruel, jealous, or ungrateful. I answered my principal because my school had a real stake in what happened next. I told her only what I could support. The foundation board had suspended Vivian's authority pending review. The licensing announcement had been paused, and Vivian had threatened the school grant if I refused to retract. I forwarded our grant documents and Rachel Monroe's contact information. I did not ask the school to defend me. I asked them to prepare for the possibility that the money would be frozen. By the next afternoon, it was. Our principal called me into her office and showed me the foundation notice. Pending its internal review, new disbursements were temporarily suspended. The wording was neutral. The effect was not. We had a spring festival coming, transportation deposits due, and 2 keyboards waiting for repair. I can issue a statement saying this was personal, I said. Not that I was wrong, just that the school should not be dragged into it. She shook her head. The school did not create this dispute. We will not ask you to withdraw documented concerns to protect a donor relationship. Relief came with shame attached to it. Part of me still wanted to solve the problem by sacrificing myself again. Instead, the administration began separating our music budget from the Ellis Arts Foundation. We postponed one equipment order, contacted the district arts coordinator, and set up a community fundraiser. It was slower and less glamorous than Vivian's annual check presentation. It was also ours. Zoe Ramirez called that evening. The management and licensing agreement she had refused to sign had been withdrawn while the disputed catalog was reviewed. The streaming partner had also suspended use of Still Here at Dawn under Vivian's credit. Zoe admitted she had almost signed without asking where the song came from. You were told it was cleared, I said. You were not the person who had the records. She asked whether I regretted doing it publicly. I looked at the fundraiser form spread across my kitchen table. I regret that public correction became necessary. I do not regret stopping you from signing before you knew there was a dispute. A few days later, the licensing company posted a temporary corrected credit. My name stood alone beside Still Here at Dawn, followed by a notice that licensing was suspended pending review. I read the line 3 times. There was no victory music and no dramatic call. Just my name where it should have been. That should have felt simple. Instead, I cried. The board's outside review took time. Rachel warned me not to confuse Vivian's suspension with a final legal finding. The disputed assignment needed separate examination. Copyright ownership, the foundation's licensing practices, and the estate records were related questions, not one question. I preserved the photographs Zoe had permitted me to take and provided Evelyn Grant's contact information only after Evelyn agreed. I refused to speculate about who edited my mother's memorial recording. The preserved master proved the version I had heard for years was incomplete. It did not prove who shortened it or when. People wanted a cleaner villain. A local producer invited me to tell the story of the sister who stole a legacy. I declined. I had spent too many years trapped inside Vivian's public story to build my new life around another simplified version of her. The foundation later confirmed that outside auditors were reviewing the disputed catalog. The licensing company kept commercial use on hold, and Rachel told me the questionable assignment had been referred for legal examination. None of that gave me back the years I had stayed silent, or a verdict that had not happened. I did not need Vivian destroyed to know where my boundary was. The hardest moment came during the second week after the finale, when our fundraiser numbers were still short. I stood in the music room after dismissal, staring at a keyboard repair estimate and an email from a relative telling me to apologize before. Innocent children suffered for my pride. I almost called Vivian. My thumb hovered over her name. Retract this, and I can keep the grant intact. That was not help. It was a leash. I deleted the unsent call and opened the fundraiser spreadsheet instead. Parents donated small amounts. A neighborhood restaurant offered a percentage from one evening's sales. Former students volunteered to perform. The district found temporary transportation support for the spring festival. We still postponed buying new risers, but the program did not collapse. Every replacement dollar took more work than Vivian's money had. Each one arrived without a condition attached to my silence. Near the end of that month, the Civic Arts Council offered me a featured public performance of Still Here at Dawn under my corrected credit. The venue was larger than my school auditorium, and the organizers wanted to advertise it as my return to the stage. I stared at that phrase. I had never believed the stage was mine to return to. Vivian had been the public one. I was the sister behind the piano. Even after exposing her, that old division waited for me. If I accepted a glamorous showcase, maybe I was finally competing with her after all. So I declined. Instead, I chose the school fundraiser. The auditorium was packed with folding chairs, parents with paper cups of coffee, students whispering behind the curtain, and former choir members. There were no sponsor walls or cameras. The upright piano at center stage was scratched from years of music, stands bumping into it. Before the final set, my principal introduced me simply as the choir director who had written the next song. No family legacy, no foundation title, no reference to Vivian. I sat at the piano and opened the faded green notebook. For a moment, I could not put my hands on the keys. My mother was not in the front row. She would never hear the corrected credit. Grief was still grief, even after a recording gave me back part of the truth. Then one of my students, waiting in the first row to sing later, smiled at me. I began. I played Still Here at Dawn without a screen behind me. Nothing appeared above my head except auditorium lights. I did not explain the torn page, the coffee ring, Evelyn's ledger, or the document carrying a signature I did not remember making. The song had spent enough time serving as evidence. That night, it was allowed to be music again. When I finished, the applause felt different from the noise at Brightwater Voices. It was not applause for defeating Vivian. The students were clapping because I had played something I wrote. For the first time, I did not need my sister beside me to make my authorship believable. After the fundraiser, while volunteers stacked chairs, I received a message from the foundation's temporary administrator. The board had located my green notebook among materials previously cataloged for the Ellis Legacy display. They offered to keep it in a professionally maintained archive after the review, with corrected labeling and my approval. A month earlier, that offer would have sounded respectful. I pictured the notebook inside the glossy acrylic case the foundation had used for family artifacts, perfectly lit beneath a plaque explaining its importance. I wrote back that I wanted it returned. When the notebook came back, I carried it to school in the same canvas bag I used for attendance folders and pencils. I did not put it behind glass. I placed it on the scratched upright piano in my classroom and opened to the damaged page of Still Here at Dawn. The torn corner was still there. So was the faded coffee ring. My pencil marks crossed the staff in the handwriting of the younger woman I had been before I learned to confuse silence with loyalty. A student knocked on the open door and asked whether rehearsal was still happening. Yes, I said. I slid the notebook onto the music rack. Under ordinary classroom lights, with no foundation plaque and no one else's name above mine, the page looked smaller than it had on the giant theater screen. It also looked like mine.